Now let's look at the using clause. I'm going to change the constant schema again. What I've done is I've added a name column to the show table using this command here. I've left the field name as a default null value. In other words, I have not set not null. And I've deliberately left the contents in the name field on the show table empty. What I'm going to do with the using clause is demonstrate why it needs to be used when I join the act, show and venue tables. What the using clause does is it allows me to specify the names that I join the tables on. For instance, when I join the act and show table, if I don't use the using clause and I simply use the natural join, it will attempt to join on field names that are the same. In other words, it'll try to join act ID and name to the show table using act ID and name. And obviously the names between the act and the show tables are completely different. So I would use the using clause to match act ID and act ID and make sure that it did not attempt to match on name as well. So let's go and add the column to the show table. Let's take a look at the show table and we can see we don't have a name column there. So I will copy and paste and I'll add the name column and I'll once again describe the show table. And I can also see that if I select count from show where name is null, let's say is not null, I get 0 rows. The using clause is used to specify specific columns when joining using the ANSI standard format for joining tables. Why is it needed? I made the change to the show table, so what's going to happen is it's going to attempt to join with a natural join based on common column names, act ID and the name column. So let's demonstrate that. What I have here is a query which does a natural join between act and show and retrieves the act and show IDs. And it will join or attempt to join on the act ID and the name. Because the name is null in the show table and none of the names are null in the act table, there are no matches. So let's just verify that. Let's select count from act where name is null, no records. Now let's select count from show where name is not null. So you can clearly see with a natural intersection join there are no common name columns or name column values between the act and show table. So therefore the join between the two tables without qualifying the name gives you no rows. What do I really want to do? What I actually want to do is I want to force the match on the act ID and ignore the name column because they contain totally different values. On the contrary, the act is the same value. On the act table it's the primary key and on the show table it's a foreign key. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say join these two tables, retrieve these two IDs using the act ID, and I'm going to force it to use that ID value. The equivalent in the Oracle syntax would be this. So let's get to that. Here is my SQL statement and I'm going to copy and paste it into SQL Plus. And there we have 147 rows. Let's verify it by running the Oracle proprietary format, not the ANSI format. We have 147 rows. I could verify again by simply counting all the rows in the show table. I have 147 rows in the show table. This means that when I do a natural join between the act and show tables using the act ID, I cannot possibly get more than 147 rows. And I do not have any rows in the show table that do not exist in the act table. So the using clause, we can clearly see, is used to force a column name into the join, rather than allowing the natural join to assume either a single or multiple column names. Obviously, if we had a situation where we had multiple columns that we wanted to join on, we could have a comma delimited list, such as using act ID, comma, show ID, etc.